This is news that you've been desperate to hear, of course. How are you taking it, and what are you looking at in terms of the prospects of people finally being able to come to Thailand?
Yes, well, we feel a lot of relief, and we have hope now for not just operators, but for the hotel staff and tourism staff as well. Now we can actually plan our marketing strategy and efforts to bring back tourists to Thailand. On October 11th, the Prime Minister of Thailand announced on TV that we will welcome visitors beginning November 1st without quarantining, and from 5 countries initially: Germany, the US, Britain, Singapore, and China. And I think in the coming days, we will hear more about, which other more countries that Thailand will allow to come in. And in December, we will open up more destinations, and I think 15 more destinations in Thailand to welcome tourists. So it's welcoming news, and we are jumping for joy, but we do know that it will take a while for tourism numbers to climb back to the pre-COVID levels.
Marisa, how are the hotels and the hospitality industry preparing for the reopening here, and how will the experience in hotels be different from before the pandemic?
Well, at the moment, we have SHA Plus certification in Thailand to build confidence for tourists. So SHA, Safety and Hotel Administration certification, which is certified by the World Travel and Tourism Council, endorsed by them, is, we have hygiene measures in place, and 70% of our staff are also vaccinated. Those offering service to guests are also vaccinated. In Thailand, we still have to respect and abide by the universal hygiene prevention rules. So people are walking around, everybody is very respectful, and we wear masks and things like so. So initially, tourists who come in, although they can roam freely, will have to wear their masks and maintain distance, and all of the not just hotels, but shopping malls and spa operators, everyone has these measures in place.
Marisa, I mean, obviously the news is fairly recent. It is good news, as you point out, very encouraging. I'm not sure if you heard about news over in Singapore and some of the websites on the airlines crashing there. I mean, there is a sense of pent-up demand and just people really wanting to go somewhere and really just getting that opportunity. I'm wondering, after this news came out on Thailand, have you seen bookings actually start to take place among your members?
Well, yes, maybe not so much at the moment, because in Thailand we have to go through the approval process. The Prime Minister makes the announcement, and then Parliament has to agree, and then we have the we are waiting for the official Royal Gazette announcement. So once those are official, I think we'll have bookings will trickle in. But if we're just receiving 5 countries at the moment, I think it will take some time before they do arrive. But, Thailand, we have 60% of our travelers are returned. So travelers know about Thailand and love Thailand. And I'm sure the longer they are restricted from coming back, the higher the pent-up demand.
I would assume it's been very difficult for, right.
Yes.
I was about to ask, actually, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the Tourism Authority of Thailand predicts that by the end of the year, we'll have around 700,000 tourists. And next year, we will have 10 million. And before COVID, there was 39.9 million tourists in Thailand.
So that gives us what? What's the assumption? 4 or 5 years before we return to pre-pandemic levels, given those numbers?
I think maybe sooner, maybe 2 to 3 years. Yes, depending on the policies of the source countries as well.
Right. Now, just a sense of also competition, and not to trivialize closures and job losses, but in many other tourist destinations, there's been a shrinkage, if you will, in terms of hotel rooms and capacity. What's your sense of what competition is going to look like once things reopen?
Competition. There'll be huge competition and a price war when we open. In the major tourist cities, about 50% of hotels are closed temporarily, and about 50% of our staff have left the industry. Those that have remained open are, have the potential, have the strength to financially to to high staff and everything. And also, yes, I mean, prices will come down, and I think there'll be all sorts of promotions and packages to attract the tourists in the beginning, for sure.
Marisa, are you worried at all if Thailand gets another wave and it goes into there could be another lockdown for the country? And tell me about the Phuket sandbox and how that's been performing.
In Phuket, the sandbox was initiated or was launched on the 1st of July. And since then, we've had 46,000 visitors come to Phuket. And out of those, only around 100 or so, 0.3% have tested positive when they arrive. You know, they have to go through testing when they come in, and no, there have been no transmissions from international visitors. All the international visitors coming into Thailand will have to be will have had 2 vaccination shots. Would have to go have an RT-PCR test before arrival, and will have to be tested upon arrival in Thailand. So there is a screening process, and they have to download an application as well, and you know, so that we know where they are. This is the initial process.
Yeah, Marisa, I was just asking you whether, or not, my first part of the question was, are you concerned about another lockdown, though, which could just take you back to square one?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is I'm not concerned, because our Prime Minister mentioned on the 11th that you know, deliveries of vaccines will jump threefold, and we will have in the coming months 20 million doses per month, and by the end of the year we'll have 170 million doses. So you know, most of our population would be vaccinated, and vaccinations are rolling out in key tourist destinations as well. And the Prime Minister also said that we have to save lives as well as livelihoods. It's just been too long. It's been 18 months since, you know, this year, the drop in tourists is 99%. So we really need tourism to revive the economy.
Marisa, just a final question on something you mentioned. There are many measures by which we can look at to see whether the industry is back to pre-pandemic levels. You mentioned something, 50% of staff have actually left the industry, and there's really not a lot of cash for the industry to then deploy for this reopening. I want to get your sense of when you think profitability for the industry comes back, because that might be different from visitors coming back.
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, some hotels are actually profiting through reduction of fixed costs at the moment, and those are you know, high-performing 5-star hotels that have been able to attract tourists, like in you know, Phuket, for example, and that's because they've reduced their fixed costs. But generally, I think it will take. You know, depends on how the costs are controlled, and that's the highest cost for the hotel is the salaries, right, and also the electricity and energy, things like that. So, yeah, it depends on. I think each hotel will be different, and the demand will not come in will not satisfy the supply. Of course, you know, a lot of hotels depend on the MICE segment, which will come back later, or the tour groups segment. So the hotels catering to tour groups will probably have to remain closed for, you know, at least 6 months moving forward.